Hi, everybody. Mitch Tanenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today. This is the security news update for um, September 3rd, 2023. In the Security and Privacy Alerts Department, apparently Polish trains um, have an emergency stop system. And all you need to do is send three tones on a particular frequency, 150.100 megahertz, and trains everywhere will stop. And apparently, hackers discovered this, and they thought they'd have some fun with the Polish train system. So they stopped a bunch of trains. Eventually, they figured out that it was a hack, and I think they've actually arrested the guys that did it. The parts cost about $30, and they're available off the shelf. So this is nothing sophisticated. But the real question becomes, how much of our critical infrastructure is protected by security by obscurity. Well, no one would ever guess that we use 150.100 megahertz as our emergency stop, and all you need to do is send three tones on that frequency, and all trains within the radio range will go off and turn off. I'm guessing there's a whole bucket of stuff like this, but we're going to find out about them one by one. If you're responsible for things, and you know that you have a system like this, know that it's just a matter of time before you get caught and the hackers go off and decide that they're going to have fun with you, and whatever the perturbations that are, that's going to be to you, not to them. And the software and hardware to check out department, Google is playing catch up with Microsoft. They just supposedly released their AI, large language model stuff. They have a whole, like everybody, they have a whole bunch of names. Duet, which is the competitor to Microsoft Copilot, which is the kind of the end user tool, and Vertex, which is the developer tool, and Gemini, which is the umbrella. Um, Not really out yet. I mean, you can sign up. I tried doing that yesterday, and it says, "Gee, a person from our sales team will get back to you eventually." So it's not really generally available, but they know that the ad business is going to be impacted. One of the things that's kind of interesting is, if you think about this for a minute, if you ask your favorite chat agent, whatever that is, tell me the answer to my question instead of going to Google search, right? You no longer have the Google ads that everybody loves. I mean, they're wonderful, right? Um, and you don't have to go through, looking at 100 different websites, all of which people pay money for you to go do, right? So Google is realizing that this could potentially impact their revenue negatively. I think it will, absolutely will, no question about it. And so they're looking for other revenue streams. Obviously, the entry price to get into Vertex, which is their kind of developer platform, is $300 a month plus whatever Google Cloud resources you use. That's going to be an income stream for them for sure. Um, but will that be sufficient to make up for the ad revenue they lose? I don't know. I don't think so. Um, but I hadn't really thought about this, and it's an interesting uh, scenario of what happens to ad revenue, whether you're Facebook or you're whoever. It doesn't matter who you are, right? You're selling Apple, you're selling ads, and all of a sudden people don't have to go through that search experience that you so lovingly have created, and all those ads go by the wayside. So everybody's going to who is dependent on ad revenue is going to try to figure out how do we make up that money someplace else. Next in the patches and important issues, we're seeing the Windows blue screen of death. Those of you who've been around for a while remember BSOD from Windows 7 and before. It was a very common situation. Microsoft pretty well eradicated it. I've seen it recently in the last several months. This particular blue screen of death is related to a problem with Microsoft software and MSI system boards, what we used to call motherboards. MSI is basically saying don't install the August preview patches because they will break your system. Um, I'm assuming they will fix this, but I have a suspicion of this problem, given that I've been seeing this problem, and I don't have an MSI system board for the last couple of months. I'm guessing the problem is bigger than MSI, so we shall see. In the legislative and legal department, breach notifications are getting shorter and shorter. As of September 1st, the National Credit Union Association, which insures federally chartered credit unions, is telling credit unions they have 72 hours to report breaches to them. In particular, this comes from a law that was passed last year called CERCIA, which requires everybody in critical infrastructure to go off and excuse me, to report their breaches to CISA. And since the NCUA doesn't want to be left out, if you're reporting a breach to CISA, they would like you to report that breach to them too. It doesn't seem unreasonable, but it could impact folks. And 72 hours is not very long. So if you don't have an operational plan of how you're going to go do all that, and you're anywhere in critical infrastructure, not just banks, then now might be a good time to go figure that out. Next, judges in Texas and Arkansas have they haven't banned, they put a restraining order. I don't know exactly what it is, but basically they have banned the enforcement of the laws that were due to go into effect on September 1st in Texas and Arkansas, requiring a government ID in order to access adult websites. There's a handful of states, maybe a half a dozen total, that have passed laws which require adult websites, and that's sort of a nebulous definition because it says, if you make 30% of your money from content that's directed towards adults, whatever that means, then you have to get people to get a government ID. The judges are basically saying, really what you're saying is you want to, make these companies into a pretend parent, so that it's because the parents are not paying attention to what their kids are going to, or perhaps the parents don't care, one or the other. But they're saying, this is really overreach on the part of the state governments. It's potentially a violation of the First Amendment. It's probably not going to be very effective. We're probably going to see breaches of this data. You may remember back in the 1980s, the feds passed the Video Privacy Protection Act after data on congresspersons and senators' video viewing habits, including X-rated videos, was leaked and published, and obviously Congress critters and senators were embarrassed, and they don't like being embarrassed. If there's any positive, sure way to get Congress to act is by embarrassing them. And so they passed the Video Privacy Protection Act, which makes it illegal to go off and publish the porn viewing habits of Congress people and others. So we know that if you're storing this stuff, it's going to get compromised. There's all kinds of people who have all kinds of agendas for why compromising that might be attractive to them, including embarrassing Congress critters. In the breaches department, kind of a standing thing here. We'll see how long this lasts. The Move It breach count now, according to one source, 988 companies, 59 plus million people, an estimated $100 million in revenue for the Clop ransomware group. And in just 2 days, recently, August 14th and 15th, the group leaked nearly a terabyte of data from UCLA, Siemens, Cognizant, NortonLifeLock, and NetScout. And I wonder if NortonLifeLock is giving identity theft protection coverage to people who are compromised in the breach, and if they're using their own identity theft protection or whether they're using a competitor. This is going to continue to grow. Next, I am actually in the wrong place here. Let me get in the right place. The accounting firm of Ernst & Young, this has not been a good year for them from a cybersecurity standpoint. First they got hit, 62 of their clients were hit by the Move It breach. when about 3 terabytes worth of data was compromised. Then there was a situation with 30,000 Bank of America clients whose data was compromised. And then now there's a report of a breach of 2 terabytes of internal files, which I guess could be related to MoveIt, but maybe they're just discovering all the different things that were being moved in MoveIt. And this included, important stuff. So, uh, we shall see where this goes. But from your perspective, if Ernst and Young, as an example, not to beat them up too much, is a vendor to you, and they got compromised, and your data was stolen, you're going to get sued. So maybe you can recover that from Ernst and Young, but you need to go look at the specific language that exists in your contract with each of your vendors, because the vendors are going to try to minimize their liability, which you can't blame them. If you don't hold their feet to the fire, why should they hold their own feet to the fire? Um, if you need help with that, we'll be happy to help you with that, by the way. But vendor cyber risk management, it's definitely a critical issue. Next, the Prince George's County, Maryland School District got hit by a cyber attack. The hackers are already selling the data. Amongst the data stolen were passports and driver's licenses. And if you've ever tried to get the government to change your driver's license number because it was compromised, good luck with that. It is possible to do, but very, very difficult. And just don't count on it. So, credit bureau, credit theft protection, even Norton LifeLock is not going to help you there probably. So, it's just a real challenge. Part of that is looking at, if companies ask you for certain information, you have to make a decision. Is the risk that I bear by giving them that information worth whatever the hell I get in return for it? And can I get it someplace else with less risk? Certainly a valid question. Next, the Rapatoni MLS hosting provider was hit by a ransomware attack. MLS is the multiple listing service that real estate agents use to list and view properties. The good news is that this company only supports about 12 markets, but they're big markets like San Francisco, for example. And it affected about 5% of the real estate agents in the country. Since there are multiple MLS services, you could go off you, meaning the city, so, one San Francisco realtor couldn't go off and say, I'm going to use a different service, but a real estate agent. But, the San Francisco Real Estate Agents Association could go off and say, we're moving from company A to company B. You may have to re-upload all your listings, which, obviously is not fun, but it's a lot better than being down. Again, vendor risk management and, clearly lots of business for folks that move. They're not going to move back. There's no incentive to move back. So, that's going to be just a net loss of business to those guys. Next, the University of Michigan. Sorry, guys. They shut down their IT systems the night before classes started. 30,000 staff members, 50,000 students. And they kind of said, well, why don't you bring your Big Chief tablet and number 2 pencil to class tomorrow, because the network is down, the cloud's down, the applications are down. They have begun to start bringing up some cloud-based applications, but those are not available on campus because the campus network is down. And in addition to that, the systems are unstable because they're being overloaded. Financial aid and financial refunds are impacted. So just a bit of a mess. We know that schools are always a historical problem because they don't have a lot of money. They have a lot of really smart people, but they don't have a lot of money. Moving on, some companies are being kind of accused of hypocrisy. Companies like Microsoft, Facebook, and others that do massive web scraping. And then at the other side of that, they're suing other people to say, well, gee, we want to be able to scrape your data, but we don't want you to be able to scrape our data, which seems at least a bit hypocritical. And but that's going to continue to go on. We're seeing more and more of that. companies are saying, gee, we want biometrics, we want this, we want that. And you know that stuff is going to get scraped. Next, software makers are likely to feel more liability in the wake of the MOVEit breach. Software may be the only thing that you can buy where the seller disclaims any responsibility for anything going wrong. Part of that is, of course, they say they're not selling you software; they're just kind of, well, renting it to you, maybe, or renting it for free if it's open source. Um, but we've already seen some folks get hit. The majority of the MOVEit losses I've seen have not been for for direct harm, but for breach of contract, and that seems to be keeping some weight. So we'll see how that goes. But I think if you're a software maker, the tide may be turning. And if you're a software user, then you should be pushing for more liability in your contracts because why should you take all the pain when they screw up? Next, Microsoft is joining the opposition to a proposed UN cybercrime treaty, which, by the way, the 200 countries, almost 200 countries in the UN, can't even agree on the definition of cybercrime. The the countries which are more authoritarian, basically want to say anything that puts the government in a negative light is cybercrime, and we want to be able to do whatever we want to be able to do. We want to surveil you. We want to be able to break into your systems. We want to be able to do whatever we want to do, and other countries need to help us with that when that happens. Um, don't know. They've been working on this for about 5 or 6 years. Don't know whether this is going to actually make it out. And then it's not going to get voted on until next year. But there's enough authoritarian countries out there that the thing could pass in the General Assembly where the big countries have no veto power. And lastly, the security news bites for the week. Question: what does $50,000 in iPads get you? Answer is it may be a jail sentence for some Apple executives because they tried to bribe the police department in the town where their headquarters is to give them concealed carry permits, and somebody ratted them out, and now they're on trial for bribery. Next, the FBI is getting good at undoing cybercrime. In this particular case, they took down a big botnet, and then once they took it down, they figured out a way that they could go push software to end users' computers that uninstall the botnet from the individual users' computers. Next, Apple is releasing the most unlocked iPhone ever, only to security researchers. Sorry. But that's helpful because they decided years ago they'd rather the security researchers be on their side rather than the other side. So if you are a security researcher, bona fide security researcher, you can apply for one of these phones, and pretty cool phone. Next, just a reminder that Windows 11 will force update your system if you're running 21H2 version of Windows 11 next month because it's going out of support. They will give you a warning that you need to reboot your computer after they have installed the software. And if you are running on a fully managed corporate system, then this doesn't apply to you. But in terms of the actual number of computers on the planet, that's probably 5 or 10% of the computers. So the other 90% probably do have to be concerned about this. And lastly, the U.S., like China, is collecting DNA samples on millions and millions of people. Right now in the United States, the national database called CODIS has over 20 million people's DNA in it, and they're adding to that to the tune of more than 100,000 records a month. In fact, the FBI, which runs this database, that the local police departments send them data to put in the database, is saying they need more money because they can't keep up with the demand for people who want to put DNA in the database. So, privacy, I mean, I haven't heard of a breach of CODIS, but I have heard of misuse of it by people who are authorized to be in it. So that's a different situation. But we're going to see 10% of the population is going to have their DNA in a national government controlled database. As always, if you need help, please reach out to us. And for sure, until next time, stay safe.
Turnkey Cybersecurity and Privacy Solutions offers the complete cybersecurity program for small to medium-sized businesses. They include everything needed to secure your business and meet compliance requirements. Visit our website at turnkeycybersecurityandprivacysolutions.com to learn more.